Every August, in 1,000 small towns, an empty field grows a city overnight. Lights, music, fried sugar, 10,000 strangers, and then, a week later, it's a field again, like none of it happened. Fair people will tell you the Midway has its own rules and its own memory. These 3 stories are about what the fair remembers after everyone else goes home. The summer I turned 19, I worked the lost and found booth at our county fair, a plywood counter under the grandstand, where 8 days a year the whole town's carelessness washes up. Phones, keys, one left shoe, always just one. You log it in a spiral notebook, you tag it, you wait for someone flustered to come describe it. I liked the job. It's the fair's quietest window, and everything that comes across that counter tells you a little story. This is about the items whose story I should never have learned. Day 2, a kid, maybe 10 years old, put a charm bracelet on my counter. Found it, he said, on the seat of the Ferris wheel, car number 7, on the seat, laid out flat like somebody'd arranged it. Silver, old-fashioned, little charms, a horse, a horseshoe, a tiny cursive M. It was tarnished, almost black, not lost this morning tarnished, buried in a drawer for decades tarnished. I logged it, tagged it, thought heirloom, some grandma's going to cry when she gets this back. Nobody came. Day 4, a food vendor turned in a single shoe, a girl's canvas sneaker, white gone ivory, the style you see in old photos, laces yellowed but tied, like it had been stepped out of. He'd found it dead center in the carousel, inside the ring of horses, on the wooden deck, which is roped off every night and swept every morning. I set it on the shelf, and I'm not ashamed to tell you I set it down fast, the way you put something that's warmer than it should be. And I remember looking at the bracelet next to it and having the first small cold thought, M. Day 6 was the camera. A ride jock from the Scrambler crew brought it, a disposable camera, a brand that stopped existing when my mother was in high school, cardboard casing, faded soft. It had been wedged, he said, inside the carousel's band organ, the enclosed cabinet, the one with a lock nobody had a key to anymore. They'd opened it to fix a stuck valve and found the camera sitting on the bellows, dust-free in a cabinet sealed before I was born. The film counter showed 1 exposure left. Here's where I did the thing you're not supposed to do with lost property. I paid to develop the film. I told myself it was detective work, find the owner. The photo place took 4 days, so it was after teardown, fair gone, field empty, when I opened that envelope in my car. 23 photos of a fair, our fair, same grandstand, same oaks, but wrong. Banners for a radio station that's been dead 30 years, men in truckers' caps, women with feathered hair, a Midway I recognized the way you recognize your street in a dream. And in 4 photos, 4, the same girl, 14 maybe, charm bracelet, white canvas sneakers, mid-laugh, sunburned nose. In the last of the 23, she's waving at the camera in front of the carousel. The 24th photo, the 1 exposure that was left on the counter, I hadn't taken, nobody had. But it came back developed anyway, and it wasn't 1980-something, it was now. Same Midway, our banners, our crowd, our summer, shot from low, hip height, the angle of someone small moving through a forest of adults, slightly blurred, like the photographer was walking, toward the grandstand, toward the lost and found. I did the research, you would have too. Marcy Ellison, 14, last seen at our county fair in August of 1987, in white sneakers and a charm bracelet her grandfather made, a horse, a horseshoe, an M. Last confirmed sighting, the carousel, dusk, never found. The case is still technically open. There's a man the family always suspected, a ride mechanic who left town mid-fair and died in the 90s without ever being charged. Everything I'd logged that week, bracelet, sneaker, camera, matched the police description of what she was wearing and carrying when the Midway lights swallowed her. I gave it all to the sheriff's office, along with the photos, and watched a deputy born 2 decades after 1987 try to write "found on Ferris wheel, seat number 7" in a way that sounded like evidence. They keep it in a box now. The case didn't move. Boxes rarely move cases. But I worked that booth 3 more summers, and I'll tell you what I never put in any report. Every August, something of Marcy's came back. A hair ribbon in the funhouse, summer after the camera. A little horse figurine the next year, standing upright on my own counter at closing, facing me, during the 10 minutes I'd stepped away. 1 item a year, always found in places locked, roped, or impossible, always closer to my booth than the last. Like something was working it out of wherever it was, or handing things over, one at a time, to the only person who'd bothered to log it. My last summer, closing night, I did something unprofessional. I stayed late, after the gates, sat at my dark booth in the dead fair, and said out loud, feeling insane, doing it anyway, "I know who you are, Marcy. Everything is tagged, everything is kept, nobody's forgotten." The Midway did nothing, because Midways don't. But at home, unpacking my cash box that night, I found tucked under the coin tray a strip of paper tickets, fair ride tickets, the old red kind they stopped printing in the 80s, 4 of them. Under the last one, in pencil, in a 14-year-old's round, careful hand, one word: thanks.
I ran the Dizzy Dragons my 3rd summer with the show. The little kid ride, 4 dragons, gentle circles. Kiddieland operators see one thing all day, every day. Parents. A wall of them around the fence, phones up. After a week, you can read that wall like weather. Which parent is bored, which is anxious, which is about to lose a toddler to a meltdown. You know what belongs. He didn't belong, and it took me 3 nights to figure out how I knew. Big guy, 50s, clean, friendly looking, that has to be said because everybody asks what did he look like, and the true answer is, like everyone's uncle. He showed up each night in the 8 o'clock crush and stood at the Kiddieland rail smiling at the rides. And he wore a parent wristband. Our fair color codes them daily. Paper bands, so adults can enter Kiddieland's fenced area. A new one, correct color, every single night. That's the detail that unlocked it. Because the bands come free with a child's ride pass. 1 band, 1 kid. And in 3 nights of watching that man watch the rides, I never once saw a kid come back to him. Night 4, I tested it, because I'd half convinced myself I was paranoid. When he was at the rail, I called out, friendly, "Which one's yours?" And he smiled, no flinch, smooth as a greased track, and said, "The wild one." Every parent in earshot laughed. It was a perfect answer. It was perfect, like a key is perfect, cut for 1 lock. It answered everything and identified no one, and I stood there with my start lever in my hand and my mouth dry, understanding that I'd just watched a man use a tool he had used many times before. I told D at the ticket box, who told our Patch, the fare's fixer, the man who handles problems, and the Patch did the sensible adult things. Watched him a while, checked with the gate, cash buyer, child's pass and band daily for my grandson meeting me inside. Talked to the man even, friendly, two uncles chatting, and came away saying he was odd, but there was nothing to hold. Nothing to hold. Write that phrase down. It's the motto of every story like this one. Then came the part I still dream about. Friday, the biggest night, a lost kid. It happens hourly on Fridays. The fair has a whole protocol, and the protocol is the point of this story. A little boy, maybe 5, crying by the fence, separated from his mother, and before I could wave our floater over, the man was there, kneeling, kind, perfect. "Hey now, buddy, let's find your mum. She's probably by the big slide." And he took that little boy's hand and stood up and walked, and I want you to understand the geography. The lost parents' tent was left 40 yards, lit up like a runway with a banner you could read from space. He turned right. I did the only smart thing I did all summer. I didn't shout at him. I shouted at everyone. Hit the ride's e-stop. A kiddie ride e-stop makes an ugly hydraulic bang, and 40 parents turn at once. And I pointed, arm out, the way they teach lifeguards, and I yelled the truest sentence I've ever yelled. "That man is not his dad." And the wall of parents, that bored, anxious, phone-scrolling wall I'd been reading all summer, turned into something biological. He dropped the hand. I'll never forget the physics of it. He dropped that little hand like it had gone hot, and he walked, didn't run, walked. Men like him know running is confession, sideways into the crowd, and the crowd, God bless it, would not open for him the way crowds usually do. It slowed him like syrup while security came. The boy's mother had him back in 4 minutes. The man had ID from 2 states and a folded fare map in his pocket, our fare's map, with the Kiddieland exits, not the rides, the exits, traced over in pen. They banned him, photographed him, shared him with the State Fair Association, and, because there was, everyone kept repeating it, nothing to hold, they let him walk to the parking lot. I watched him go from the Dragon platform. He never once looked back. Men like him never look back. The fair was used up, and there are other fairs. 11 months later, a carnival 2 states over flagged the same face at a gate, same trick, cash, child's band, no child. And this time, because our Patch's report was in the association system, they called police before he ever cleared the ticket box, and the warrant check came back the way it comes back in the version of the story where the paperwork finally works. He is, at this writing, where he should have been for years. That's on record, and I keep the news article, and some nights I read it like scripture. But here's what I actually carry, all these years later, running my own ride cruise. The wall of parents turned in 1 second flat because a bored teenager with a lever had spent 3 nights counting wristbands. Every safety system at that fair, the fences, the bands, the tent, the patch, did its job, and none of it would have mattered without the count. So this is for every kid working a summer midway, bored out of your skull at the rail. You are not decoration. You are the count. Count the bands. Count the kids. Count who leaves with whom. Every fair has traditions the public sees. The tractor parade, the pie auction, the fireworks, and most have 1 or 2 the public doesn't. Ours was this. On closing night, after the gates were chained and the midway went dark, the last thing to shut down, the very last, after even the generators upwind, was the carousel. It ran one full cycle, empty. Lights on, organ playing, 60 painted horses circling for nobody in a dead black fair. And then it stopped, and the season was over. I asked why my first summer and got the answer every green hand gets, delivered like a safety rule. That's the last ride. We run the last ride. Asking why twice marked you as someone who hadn't been there long. Even the roughest crews, guys who'd steal the boots off a sleeping man, went quiet for it, hats actually off, some of them. 60 years of fair people had run that empty ride like it was load-bearing. Then we got a new operations manager, young, sharp, spreadsheet guy, and I want to be fair to him because the fair was bleeding money and he stopped the bleeding, and nothing about a nightly empty carousel cycle survives contact with a spreadsheet. Diesel, insurance hours, staff overtime, he did the math out loud at the season meeting and cancelled the last ride like cancelling a magazine subscription. The old-timers in the back of that meeting didn't argue. I remember thinking that was strange, them not arguing. It wasn't agreement, it was the silence of men watching someone lean on a door they'd spent their lives keeping shut. That season was wrong from the first night, and I know that sounds. Confirmation bias, they call it. You cancel a ritual, then you count every dropped wrench as an omen. So I'll keep to the log, because I was the one writing the maintenance log. Night 1, main breaker trips, 40 minutes dark, no fault ever found. Night 2, the zipper throws a door pin, closed position, thank God, nobody out of harness, a pin our inspector had passed that morning. Night 3, a grease fire, small, out in a minute, in a fryer that had passed inspection. Night 4, the wind came up out of a clear sky, and we stood in a huddle watching the Ferris wheel rock on its blocks like a tooth in a socket, and the ride boss, 30 years on the road, a man I watched sleep through a tornado warning once, stood there chewing his lip and said quietly to nobody, "Run the ride." Night 5, a cable on the Sea Dragon frayed to its last strands behind an access panel, caught at the evening inspection by a mechanic who told me, white-faced, that he'd checked that panel 2 days prior and had no reason to open it again, and did anyway, because, his words, logged, I'm quoting my own logbook, it felt looked at. That night, after close, the old-timers didn't ask the ops manager. Around midnight, the carousel lights came on by themselves, by which I mean I found out later which hands turned the switches, so not by themselves at all, but that's how it felt, watching light bloom in a dead fair, and the organ wound up, and the empty horses ran their cycle, while a dozen career carnies stood around it with their hats off, and the spreadsheet guy came storming down the midway to shut it off, and the ride boss put a hand on his chest, gently, I want to be clear, gently, and told him the story that I will now tell you, the way I heard it, in the dark, over an empty carousel. In 1962, the man who ran that carousel had a daughter, 8 years old, sick most of that summer, the kind of sick that 1962 couldn't fix, and her wish, the thing she held on to in a hospital bed 40 miles away, was the last ride of the season, just her, all the horses to herself, the way her dad had promised. Closing night, he chained the gates, fired the lights, and ran the carousel empty at midnight, because that afternoon the hospital had called, and the promise outlived the girl by 6 hours. And every closing night for the next 22 years, until he died with a grease rag in his pocket, he ran her ride. And then the fair kept running it, because fair people understood something the spreadsheet never could. Some debts don't expire, they just change hands. The ops manager stood there a long minute, then he took his hat off. He never cancelled it again. Line item, closing procedures, carousel, one cycle, approved annually. The bad luck season ended that night, and you can believe those two facts are related, or you can believe in coincidence, and I've stopped arguing with either camp. I'm the one who runs the last ride now, have been for years. I chain the gates, I kill the midway, and I stand at the operator's station and run 60 empty horses under the lights for a girl who's been waiting since 1962. And I will tell you the last thing, the thing I've never even told the crew, and then you can file me wherever you file people like me. The horses are fiberglass. They hold the day's heat a while, then go cold with the night. All of them, every night, by midnight, cold as pipes. All of them except one, the white one, third row, with the painted roses in its mane. Every closing night, only closing night, when the cycle ends and I walk the deck with my flashlight, its saddle is warm. We run the last ride, that's the whole rule. Somebody's still on it.
If you've made it this far, next August, when the fair packs up and the field goes back to being a field, stand at the fence line a minute after the lights die. Every carnival is a town that vanishes overnight, and not everything that comes to the fair leaves with it. Subscribe to the hollow dial, because time doesn't heal, it haunts. Got a true carnival or fair story? Leave it in the comments. We're listening, and so is something else.